What is up, my friends, and welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. Hello to you, and thank you so much for hanging out with us. Tyler Zulli here with you, Andrew Frazier producing today's show. Welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast, as always, brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And use the promo code PHLY365, deposit just $10, and bet $5, and you'll get $150 back in bonus bets, whether you win or you lose. And again, that's why it's part of the reason it's never ordinary at Bet365. And last night was not ordinary either. It was a whole heck of a lot more fun than this past weekend. I have moved past the Brewers series for the most part. There's things that I would like to see cleaned up, no question about it. But yesterday was a reversal of fortunes. Yesterday was a lot of fun. Yesterday was an offensive performance that felt predictive, but it was on the Phillies to capitalize. And I'll explain what I mean in just a little bit. So today we're going to talk about yesterday's win. Big first inning out of the Phils. Bryce Harper back. The importance of Bryce Harper in the lineup, which is probably like our no-duh statement of the day. We're going to get to our big deal segment coming up in just a little bit. We'll tell you who the big deal of the week so far is. We're going to get to our Ace Hardware temperature check, where we'll check in on one Phillies player who's heating up or who's cooling down, and we'll do that later in the show. And then at the end of the show, if time permitting, we're going to do a little bit of a potpourri, if you will. If you were a fan of the SNL Jeopardy back in the day, Potent Potables was the category that no one ever wanted to touch. And the joke was it was just a little bit of everything. But we'll wrap things up with a little bit of fun throughout baseball as we talk about the numbers of the game. We talk about the fallout. I shouldn't say the fallout. The response that we've had on social media to our all-century or all-quarter-century team so far. And then we're going to wrap things up with a little on this day in history. So hello to everybody in the chat. What's up to you if you're here? Thank you so much for watching. Before you go, if you would not mind, just hit the like button. Drop the subscribe as well. It takes 2 seconds, and then you can get notified on this show, on any show or all shows from PHLY, as we have a lot of good in store for you today. Let's jump right into things. That's enough. Oh, sorry, I just shook the entire table. That's enough talking and rambling for me. Let's jump right into things because we only have an hour to do things today. So let's start with yesterday's game. And as I said, last night was a lot of fun. After what was a really, really unfun weekend against the Milwaukee Brewers. So the Phils win 8-3 and do a majority of their damage in the first inning against the starter Bowden Francis. So they score 6 runs in the first inning. They bat around, and I think more importantly than the runs that they, maybe not more importantly, the runs obviously are the most important piece, but equally as important to the runs that they produced, equally as important to the fact that they sent, I believe, 11 hitters to the plate in the first inning of that game. They jumped all over Bowden Francis, and they were making hard contact every single at bat. Every batted ball that they hit against Bowden Francis seemed like it was a rocket off the bat. Now, I will say this. Bowden Francis had nothing yesterday. I mean, his stuff was dead. It was totally lifeless. He has not had a particularly good year this season so far anyway. But last night, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've watched all of his starts, but prior to every series, I do go and watch like the highlights and the lowlights of the guys that they're going to face. And last year, there was a lot of highlights for Bowden Francis. He was really good for the Blue Jays. This year, he's been really, really bad. His whip is high. He's getting hit around hard. As we talked about in the series preview yesterday, the barrel rates are up. The hard hit percentage is up. And the Phillies took advantage of a guy who not only has pitched poorly this season so far, but had really awful stuff yesterday. Fastball was flat. We talked about that in the preview as well. He only averaged about 92.5, so he's 92, 93 with his fastball for most of the season. But it was just totally lifeless. It had no movement. It had no life to it. It felt like it was coming out of his hand, and it was just like being drug on a string through the strike zone. There was no life to that pitch whatsoever. And then his breaking balls, like you could tell that was a guy last night who said, man, my fastball sucks today. So he started to throw a lot of breaking balls. He was bending the plate a lot. He was wrapping the plate a lot. He was trying to get, especially like he did it to Kyle Schwarber successfully. And then to everybody else, he was trying to do it, especially to the lefties in the lineup. He was trying to get them to go fish down in the zone, below the zone, not even down in the zone, below the zone, especially with the curveball. Now, Kyle Schwarber was the seemingly lone exception to the team's hit brigade yesterday because Schwarber was 0 for 5 with 3 Ks. But the at-bats against Francis, it felt like when you were playing MLB The Show on a level that you should not be playing at. And what I mean by that is, like, are you playing on veteran when you should be playing on all pro? Are you playing on rookie when you should be playing on veteran? Because you kind of like zone in on fastballs and take advantage of them. And that's what the Phillies did yesterday. And tip of the cap to them, because when you're facing a pitcher who's dead in the water like that, you have to be the shark that smells blood. You have to take advantage. And that's exactly what the Phillies did yesterday. They took advantage of a bad pitcher who just did not have good stuff. So in the first inning of yesterday's game, as I said, they sent 11 guys to the plate. They put 7 balls in play. Every single ball that the Phillies put in play yesterday was off the bat at 99 miles an hour or more. 4 of those 7 swings came off the bat at over 102 miles an hour. To the point where even Trea Turner's fly out to end the inning, when he flew out to fairly deep center field, ended up being hit at 99 miles an hour. Like, that left his bat, and I went, not enough distance to get out, but if it finds a gap, it's going to be a triple because of Turner's speed and the fact that it probably was going to carry him off the wall. Now, it didn't end up finding a gap. It was caught in center field, but even that ball was hit hard. So last night, the Phillies did an excellent job of jumping on Bowden Francis early and getting exactly what they needed to get out of a guy who didn't have very good stuff. The other portion of getting to Francis early was something that we really keyed in on in the series preview, which was the Toronto Blue Jays. Their starting pitching is terrible in the first inning. Last night they came into last night they came into yesterday's game with a 5.8 ERA in the first inning. Bowden Francis gave up 6. It's now up to 6.6. The Toronto Blue Jays have a 6.6 ERA in the first inning of games this year. If you're a betting person, like, if you just blindly took yes run first inning in every Toronto Blue Jays start, you'd probably be up money. Because now their ERA is above 6. It's actually closer to 7 than it is to 6. And it is now the second worst team ERA in the first inning across all of Major League Baseball. And I'll give you exactly one guess to take a guess as to who number 2 might be, or who number 1 might be. It's no surprise. It's the team that just got to their 10th win. It's the team that just won their first series of the year, and it's June. It's the Colorado Rockies. They're at an 8. I mean, their pitching staff in total has been terrible, but their first inning numbers have been specifically awful. That's the territory the Blue Jays have found themselves in. So obviously, you want to take advantage when a starting rotation doesn't get settled, because now the next 2 guys that you're going to face, while their first inning numbers aren't off the charts, the next 2 guys that you're going to face in Jose Barrios and Chris Bassett have had much better seasons than what Bowden Francis has done so far. So they did exactly what they were supposed to do in game 1 by taking advantage of a bad pitcher who was not pitching well and jumping on him for 6 runs in the first inning. And then the next thing about that first inning to me that I think really stood out, outside of the balls being hit hard, 99 or more off of every at bat, the expected batting average of these balls that were hit is off the charts. Trea Turner's flyout to end the inning had the lowest expected batting average of balls that were put in play. It was 370. Here's the numbers that the Phillies had on their base hits yesterday and balls that were put in play in the first inning. Expected batting averages of 430, 510, 540, 2 that were expected batting averages of 720 and 740. The Phillies did not get cheated last night. The Phillies took advantage of Bowden Francis. These weren't bloop base hits, and sometimes you need bloop base hits. Sometimes you just need something to fall, and you just need it to find space, and then you get lucky, right? That's when the pendulum is swung in your direction and things are going well. You find some soft spot. A bloop base hit gets over the shortstop's head but falls short of the left fielder. You hit a little dribbler down the line that the third baseman tries to bare hand pick up, and by the time he picks it up, you've beaten it out already. Those types of things happen all the time, especially when your team is going well. Last night, that was not the case for the Phillies. Last night, the Phillies got everything that they earned and deserved by the fact that they were hitting the ball extremely hard, especially in the first inning. All right, so the offense was electric. It got 6 of its 8 runs in the first inning, kind of pretty much at that point coasted to the win. I give credit to Eric Lauer for coming in. That's a difficult spot as a long man. Now, I understand it's very, very low leverage at that point. You're just there to throw strikes and get outs. But I think that, I got to give the guy credit for coming in and pitching well out of the bullpen yesterday. When your team is in need of some length, in need of some innings, because Bowden Francis ended up only going an inning and 2/3. Lauer gave you 4 good innings and, in fact, only gave up 1 base runner. It was a walk. So I got to give credit to Eric Lauer. But the second thing that the Phillies did yesterday, which kind of got overlooked by the fact that they had 8 runs and 6 of them came early, was the fact that Cristopher Sanchez turned in another good start yesterday. I will say this. I'm going to give you the good, and then I'm going to give you the bad, and I'm going to tell you why it becomes difficult to pair the two when a pitcher pitches well from a statistical standpoint. Last night, Cristopher Sanchez threw 6 innings of 1-run ball. He struck out 4, and at times yesterday, his stuff was nasty. Slider looked good. Changeup looked good. Velo was down a little bit, but nothing to be concerned about. I think he was probably understanding that he was pitching with a pretty sizable lead. So it's really, really difficult to talk about the bad things, or I don't even want to say the bad things, because it was a good start. It was one of those starts that we've come to discuss when it was, hey, didn't have his best stuff, or didn't have his best command, or, was struggling to find a pull-down spot, or whatever the case may be. It was one of those starts where I don't think Cristopher Sanchez was at his best yesterday and ended up still giving you 6 really good innings against the lineup that has at times scored in bunches. We talked about it yesterday. 17 times the Toronto Blue Jays have scored 7 or more runs this season in the first 60 games. So it's not like they get cheated when they score runs. And so it's hard to differentiate. Cristopher Sanchez's final line was good, and there were things I'd like to see improved. So let's talk about the things that I wanted to see improve, because it is something that's kind of trended over the last couple of starts. And I think the one thing that I'd love to see from Sanchez improve on in the next couple of starts is his command. He's now walked 3 hitters or more in 5 of his last 7 starts. And I wrote in my notes, it's really short-sighted to complain about a guy with a 3.15 ERA and 74 strikeouts in less than 66 innings pitched, who again was good last night and gave your team an incredible opportunity to win the game. But I do think in last night's game and over the last couple of starts, the command does raise a question. And is that question answered by something that we lauded a ton in the offseason? And the question was, is the velocity increase too much? And which is crazy to say. Like, I will never, ever tell a guy to stop throwing hard. But Cristopher Sanchez throughout his career was a guy that dialed it back to gain command, to learn how to pitch, to work on his secondary stuff, and then ramped it back up. And then we saw in spring training, he was 97, 98. And we were like, whoa, man, if he can sit 96, 97 continuously, this dude's going to be in for a hell of a year. And that's pretty much what he's given you. I think he's averaging on his sinker 95.8, I want to say, with, off the top of my head. And the numbers are excellent. As I said, a 3.15 ERA and well over a strikeout per inning pitched. Cristopher Sanchez is on pace to have a career high in strikeouts. He's on pace for a career high in innings pitched. And he's on pace for the potential for a career high in wins. Last year, he won 11 games. This year, through 12 starts, he's already 5-1. Last year, he threw 181 innings in 31 starts. If you take his 12 starts and multiply it by the 2.8-ish that he's going to see, through the rest of the year, assuming he stays healthy, if you multiply that by about 2.8, which is about what he has left, he's going to get to about 185 innings, which is a career high. He's also on pace to shatter his strikeout record. Last year, he struck out 153. He's already halfway there through 12 starts. He's going to get to 150 by the time the calendar flips to August, let alone September and into the postseason. So it's really difficult for me to complain about anything with as good as the starting pitching has been throughout the course of the season so far. But I do think that if I'm being objective and I'm being fair, I do think that the command has been less than it's been over the first couple of starts and into last year. So to put it into perspective, last night he threw 52 sinkers and 54% of them were in the zone. And he was only in the zone at about 46% in the game in its entirety. We talked about this during his last start. That doesn't always equate to bad command. Sometimes those things are intentional. A lot of if you're throwing a lot of breaking balls, as Cristopher Sanchez throws a lot of off-speed changeups, if that's the case, you may see a low percentage of pitches in the zone intentionally because you're trying to get righties to dive out over the plate on the changeup. You're trying to get righties to swing over top of the slider off the back foot. You're trying to get lefties to dive out over the plate on the slider down and away. So a lot of things can come into this consideration as to, is it bad command or is it intentional? And I think at times for Cristopher Sanchez, that 46, 48, 50% is an intentional number. Last night, it felt like he was battling himself a little bit more. And I think the walk rate is due in part because of that. So last year, his walk rate was 5.8%. He was excellent in limiting the walks. This year, he's up to 9.3%. And I think that could be due in part to the fact that he's not getting as much chase this year, as maybe hitters have adjusted a little bit to knowing that he is going to throw out of the zone a little bit more, knowing that the changeup's going to be off the plate, knowing that the slider is going to be off the back foot, knowing that he likes to run the sinker, out and away to right-handed hitters, especially considering the fact that he's facing as many right-handed hitters as he is. But I will say this inversely, he's striking out over 6% more hitters that he faced last year. As I said, he's on pace to shatter the 151 that he had last season. So he was at 20% last year, 20.3%. This year, he's up to 26.4. And he's doing all of this while keeping the thing that Cristopher Sanchez does the best, which is keep the ball on the ground. He's still in the 95th percentile in ground ball rates. Last year, he was in the 98th percentile. This year, he's continuing that trend. So it's very hard to pick out a bad thing when a guy's been as good as he has been this year. But again, objectivity, I think, is a fair conversation piece. I think you guys have realized that's what I try to bring about on this show. And I do think the command has been less than it was last year, and it has resulted in more walks this season than last season. Again, hard to argue with a 3.15 ERA and 74 strikeouts from a guy who, by the way, we've talked about this before, from a guy who is locked up long-term, or at least for another, a semi-long-term deal, and making a pittance compared to what his numbers should be. He's on a 4-year, $22.5 million deal with 2 club options that could come into play in 2029 and 2030. If the Phillies exercise the club options, which I understand there's 3.5 seasons left until we get to that point, but they're only $14 and $15 million club options. If Cristopher Sanchez continues to pitch this way into his year 31 season, the Phillies are going to go, yes, please, club option, $14 million. Yes, please, club option, $15 million. If you say that this ends up being a 6-year contract, Cristopher Sanchez is going to end up making $53 million over 6 years. For a guy who legitimately could be a Cy Young candidate with his stuff. That's unbelievable to me. To say that this guy is going to end up being over a 6-year deal, making less than $9 million per year on average over a 6-year deal. Unbelievable return on investment. But that is the recap from yesterday's game. We have to get into our Ace Hardware temperature check segment in just a little bit, our big deal segment in just a little bit, and we're going to wrap things up with some fun here on the PHLY Phillies podcast, brought to us by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Let's pause for just a moment and tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. Speaking of Bet365, they're our presenting sponsor and they're our first ad read today. No matter what the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And as many users as they've featured, which is 90 million, will attest to that. It's because they offer 780,000 live streamed events each year. They are the pioneers of live in-game betting. But it's not just baseball that we've talked about. It's not just pro sports in America. It's not just college sports in America. You can live in-game bet on 78 different platforms. And of course, you get the early payouts in both the NHL as the championships unfold in both the NHL and the NBA. You're going to get the early payouts if your team's up by 3 goals in the NHL or 20 points in the NBA. And of course, new users right now get $150 back in bonus bets when you bet just $5, win or lose. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to sign up, use the promo code PHLY365, deposit $10 and place your first bet for just $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets, win or lose. And your bonus bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and so much more. And that is why, whatever the moment, it is never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, and while we're here, let's tell you about our friends over at Cherry Hill Mitsubishi. If you're looking for the most affordable 7-passenger SUV in America, maybe you're thinking about your family is growing. Maybe you've gotten to a point where you are having to take the team to baseball practice or softball practice, or if you're just looking to take all of your friends to the next tailgate event, the best available option is the 2025 Mitsubishi Outlander at cherryhillmitsubishi.com. And they're celebrating Memorial Day savings all month long on their massive selection of budget-friendly and gas-economic Mitsubishis. And here's a fact that kind of is crazy to me. They're number one in customer satisfaction with dealer services among mainstream brands and SUV owners. That's just not me saying that. That's JD Power saying that. You can combine that with the best warranty in all of automotive business, which is 10 years, 100,000 miles powertrain, or 5 years, 60,000 miles bumper to bumper. You're going to get incredible warranty, incredible customer satisfaction, and that spacious 2025 Outlander that you're looking for. So stop in today, tell them PHLY sent you, and you can get a $100 restaurant.com gift card just for taking a test drive or completing a trade appraisal. Listen, I know people buy Mitsubishis elsewhere. I just don't know why. You can drive home in your new Mitsubishi today, just minutes from all bridges, or available online 24/7 at cherryhillmitsubishi.com. That's a word I struggle with. You have any of those words that you just like, you know how to pronounce it, and when it comes out of your mouth, it's just been a struggle. It's just like a struggle. Mitsubishi is one of them. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry to them. I really struggle with that. Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Tyler Zulli here. Hello to everybody in the chat. AC Philly, Ray Schumacher, K-Red, Blanche Devereaux. What's up, Blanche? Who else is here? We had some people earlier. Magic. What's up, Magic? Hello to everybody. If I didn't mention you, I apologize. Hello to you. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for joining us on the PHLY Phillies podcast. Let's get speaking of Cherry Hill Mitsubishi, let's get to our big deal segment of the day, which of course is brought to us by our friends over at Cherry Hill Mitsubishi. Shop 24/7 at cherryhillmitsubishi.com. Check out the brand new 2025 Outlander, as I just told you about. They're celebrating the Memorial Day savings all month long. Let's get to the big deal segment of today's show, and the big deal is Mick Abel. Mick Abel makes his return to the rotation after making his major league debut a handful of weeks ago. It feels like it wasn't that long ago, but then I looked. It was May 18th that Mick Abel made his major league debut. So it's been, about a half a month since he's been back with the team. But as we know, that they've made some moves. Taijuan Walker is going to be put into a leverage role as the Phillies kind of desperately search for any kind of help in the back end of the bullpen. We'll talk a little bit more about Taijuan Walker in that kind of leverage spot in just a little bit. But for me, Mick Abel is the big deal today, because after his first start, and I think we all remember how good it was, not just because of the fact that he threw 6 shutout innings, not because of the fact that he only scattered 5 hits, not because of the fact that he didn't walk any, or the fact that he struck out 9. It was the fact that he went up and battled Paul Skeens, who, by the way, I know I've said this before, get that man out of Pittsburgh. That organization's a mess. But he went out and battled Paul Skeens and tied a Phillies record that was held by Curt Simmons back in 1947, I believe that it was, for the most strikeouts in a major league debut with the Phillies. And I brought this up when the start, happened. The difference between Simmons and Abel is they both had 9 strikeouts. They both surrendered 5 hits. Abel walked 0. Kurt Simmons walked 6. And so for a guy in Mick Abel who has really, really struggled with his command throughout his time in the minor leagues, former first round pick, 15th overall selection, the whip throughout most of his minor league tenure just was not good for a guy that, as I've brought up many, many times, has kind of been cast off, to myself included, kind of wrote him off a little bit, to be just 23, to go through that gamut, that cycle of the highs of being a 15th overall pick to the lows of being considered a bust to everywhere in between, to now get back to make your second major league start of the year and to be not just trusted, but relied upon, I think is so important to this kid's development. Last year in AAA, he was like legitimately one of the worst AAA pitchers in the International League. He posted a 6.46 ERA. He had a 1.8 whip. And a lot of that was due in part because his command was so bad. And his command was so bad, which was leading to a lot of walks. And his command was so bad, which was leading to him falling behind in counts and then having to throw a lot of stuff over the heart of the plate, which is where the high hit total came in. So he was giving up a lot of hits. He was walking a lot of hitters. And the ERA really suffered because of it. And so the start against the Pirates was really encouraging because the command was way, way, way better. And it wasn't just the start against the Pirates. And I get it, AC Philly, right? It's the Pirates. It's not a great lineup. They struggle offensively. They are among the bottom 3 to 5 in most statistical categories across baseball. But I still do think there's merit to coming up, making your major league debut, being tasked with, going up against Paul Skeens. I think that's important. I think you have to think about that a little bit and rising to the occasion. And we talked about the command. His command has been really, really good, both in AAA for Lehigh Valley this year and in the one start that he made against the Pirates. He uses all 5 of his pitches. He attacked the zone early. He was able to spot the fastball and spot it well, and that set up the breaking ball. That set up the off-speed stuff. And as I mentioned in that first start, he got ahead of the first 5 hitters that he faced. He then got ahead in total of 12 of the first 18 hitters that he faced who saw at least one pitch. Velocity was good. Command was good. Generated a lot of swing and miss. Got 18 whiffs on the day. And 32 of his 84 pitches were either called strikes or whiffs. And so I'm not going to sit here and say, like, Mick Abel, everyday 5th starter right now, because I don't know the answer to that question. Let's see how he follows it up. But I do have to give the guy a lot of credit for pitching as poised and as in control as he was for making his major league start. And now he's going to go up against a better offense, right? You bring up the Pirates. He's going to go up against a better offense in the Toronto Blue Jays today. They're not world class, but as we've mentioned earlier in the show, they can light you up if you're not careful. They can get to you if you're not careful, and they've put up crooked numbers plenty of times in the past. If he produces a bad start today, it's not the end of the world. I think that he's going to get a little bit more leeway now than he did after his first start. But I will also say, Rob Thompson made it very clear. He made it vocally clear to both the media, to the team, made it to all, the media, the team, and Mick Abel, that it was one start. And so maybe the pressure is a little bit off of you because you're not auditioning, right? You're not looking to make another start. You're not starting in another 5 days. Now I think he is. Now I do think whether it is for this rotation or as a trade piece for either a bona fide reliever, back end, high leverage guy, a starting center fielder, whatever the case may be, now I do think they're going to kind of take those. He's going to have to be a little bit more careful with what the next couple of starts provide him. And I'm not trying to put any extra pressure on the kid. That's just the reality of the situation. Is he was excellent in his first start, really spotted the fastball well, and the off-speed stuff was good. So without placing like an enormous amount of pressure on Mick Abel, because it's just not fair to the kid, I do think there is a little bit added pressure on him this time around as opposed to the first start when it was very evident that it was a one and done type of thing. I think he's got good stuff. I'm really excited to see what he does tonight. I'm very much excited to see round two. And I hope to, whatever higher power that you believe in, I hope to that entity that I'm proven wrong, that I was too quick to judge Mick Abel. I hope that he basically, double middle finger salutes me and never relinquishes this spot in the rotation. Or inversely, never relinquishes the spot in the rotation that might lead to a trade down the line. Now, you could say, hey, he's part of the future. I'm not moving him, which is a fair sentiment to have too. Because if you're thinking about Ranger Suarez probably in the last year as a Philly, if you're thinking about Zach Wheeler, who continues to dominate and continues to get better, but also will be 35 next year. If you're thinking about what does the future hold for Aaron Nola, who's been rough this season and is now on the IL with the ankle problem. If you're thinking about when do the Phillies extend Jesus Luzardo, which should happen, forget the 12 runs that he gave up. I'd still do it today. I'd still extend Jesus Luzardo immediately because I think he's deserved it and earned it. But I do think if you're thinking about, right now versus the future, it is a balancing act between Painter's untouchable. There's no question about it. This team would not move Andrew Painter unless it returned. This is hyperbolic. I'm fully aware that this is a hyperbolic conversation. But how many pitchers would the Phillies, if you were going to go pitcher for pitcher, how many pitchers would the Phillies say yes to in Major League Baseball if a team said 1-for-1 Andrew Painter for blank? There's the obvious, right? Tarek Skubal, Paul Skeens, those type of dudes, no questions asked. If you said to me, hey, here's Tarek Skubal, give us Andrew Painter, I'm laughing and I'm driving Andrew Painter to Detroit. I just think Tarek Skubal's that freaking good. Same thing with Paul Skeens. And I get, again, it's a hyperbolic, bar room type of conversation, but there is a little bit of truth to it, or a little bit of fairness to it, to say, if I offered you Andrew Painter, or if I offered you pitcher X, what would it take to get Andrew Painter? I think that the sample size is probably a pretty small group across Major League Baseball. So, I think that with Andrew Painter being untouchable, or damn near close to it, I'm not so sure that Mick Abel's not. I would love to see Mick Abel be a staple of this rotation for years to come. Could he be a 3 or a 4 in this rotation? Would love to see it. Would absolutely love to see it. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm trying to get comfortable. This chair is so uncomfy. Would absolutely love to see it. But I think if the Phillies were to move a prospect for a legitimate, bona fide back end of the rotation guy, especially with one with team control, or an everyday center fielder. Again, I think team control is an important piece. Dave Dombrowski, for the most part, has been that guy who likes team control. Estevez was a rare example of a player that wasn't. If it's for team control, I think Abel's probably in a conversation. He's worth a lot because he's clearly major league ready. So if you're thinking about an everyday center fielder, if you're thinking about a closer / lights out high leverage guy, because I know Rob Thompson doesn't like to do closer, then I think Abel's name probably comes into the conversation. But with that being said, the big deal tonight, because there's no deal in place right now, and I don't think anything's come of it, and nothing will come of it for another month and a half time. If anything, if the big deal tonight, lost train of thought for a second. The big deal tonight is Mick Abel making his second major league start. All right, we're going to pause again for just a little bit. On the other side, we're going to get into our Ace Hardware temperature check, and we're going to wrap things up today with a little bit of fun. I'll also get into some of your comments, because I know you guys are talking about the Painter versus Abel versus Ranger debate of, if you were to trade a player, which one do you think? Because I think there's a different conversation between which is most likely and which would you do. So we'll do that in a little bit as well. But we're going to pause for just a moment and tell you about some more of our friends here at PHLY. All right, let's tell you about our friends over at Empire today because, listen, we've all been to the big box stores. You wander aimlessly through those aisles, and sometimes you're left with hauling all of the materials home by yourself. I don't know about you. I don't drive a particularly large car. I have a sedan. It's not going to fit the materials that I need. It's not going to get me where I need to go. And on top of that, you may be getting help from somebody who's trying their best, but they're not a flooring expert. Maybe they were in hardware or outdoor or garden or whatever the case may be. They're not a flooring expert. And with Empire today, flooring is all they do. They offer you dedicated flooring professionals who focus solely on flooring each and every day. They're going to take the showroom and bring it right to your home. You're going to be able to pick out the right flooring and the right colors for your space. You can see how it looks with your furniture in your home. They'll take precise measurements and have all of your questions answered by those pros who are not going to leave you wanting or guessing to figure out the end product. And with Empire today, you get clear upfront and all-inclusive pricing. Plus, you can schedule an installation as soon as the next day. So schedule that free in-home estimate today because some things are just better when you do them from home. And PHLY listeners can receive up to $350 back or $350 discount, when they use the promo code PHLY. Once again, a $350 discount with the code PHLY. Restrictions do apply. Visit Empire today/PHLY for more details. And speaking about no hidden fees, all upfront costs, and understanding exactly what you're going to pay, how about the Game Time app? And you can get in on all of the action now that the NFL schedule is released. You can get your tickets as soon as today. Game Time is the ticketing hack. It's not just the best app, but it's the life hack for unlocking incredible seats and incredible experiences for great prices. And again, now that the NFL season is out and your hometown Birds, you know where they're headed, you know the road trips, get on over to Game Time and buy the best tickets. And with the Game Time app, if you are going to hit the road and travel with your football squad this month, or this fall and winter, I guess you could travel with them this month, but there's really nowhere to go. If you're going to travel with them this fall and winter, sometimes you don't know what the layout of a stadium looks like. Well, with Game Time, you can use the 3D seat layout to see exactly where your seats are going to be. You're going to know where you're facing. Is your seat angled the wrong way? Do you have an obstructed view? What are you looking at? Is there a big wall to your right or to your left that you're going to feel uncomfortable with? Not have to worry about that with the Game Time app. And again, you can get priority last-minute deals and save up to almost 60% by buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. And your tickets are always covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time, download the app, create an account, and use the code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Once again, use the code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Tyler Zulli here with you, Andrew Frazier producing today's show. It is time to get into our Ace Hardware temperature check segment as we check in on a Phillies player that is either heating up or cooling down. And that, of course, is brought to us by our friends over at Ace Hardware, where they bring the helpful hardware home service team right to your front door. Let's check in. We're going to do things a little bit different today. We've been doing it with guys on the 26-man roster for the most part, but let's check in on a prospect that is heating up. And it is a prospect that is not just heating up, but one that is like skyrocketing through the ranks, that is skyrocketing through the conversation as one of the best prospects in the Phillies farm system, and that is infielder Aron Escobar. He's been primarily a second baseman this year, and all this kid has done over the last two seasons is hit and hit and hit and hit and hit. Last year, he was 19 years old. He was with the Phillies Rookie League. He hit .338 with a near 500 on-base percentage and a .976 OPS. So naturally, after a really strong season at year 20, he got the promotion to Clearwater, and he's continued in the Florida State League exactly where he's left off, but with an added bonus. Last year, he hit a handful of home runs over the course of the season. This year, Aron Escobar has 10 home runs already this year. His slugging has jumped up nearly 50 points compared to last season. He has 18 extra base hits in total, and he's still hitting .320 in single-A Clearwater. He has already surpassed his minor league career highs in doubles, home runs, and RBI. And his 10 home runs so far this year lead the Florida State League. He has been unbelievable so far for the Phillies and for Clearwater. And he's, again, as I mentioned, he's 20 years old. The Phillies have an influx of young prospects that are continuing to get better and better and better. Aaron Escobar is that way. My favorite prospect, you've heard me rave about this kid, is Eduardo Taiit. I love Taiit's bat. I still have questions on if he's a major league catcher, everyday major league catcher, but I don't doubt that this kid is destined to be a major league hitter. Aaron Escobar is another guy at 20 years old who's continuing to shoot up through the minor league system, and he's doing it not just with good average, right? The pop is now there. He continues to hit the ball hard. He's not chasing a ton. And the one thing that is really impressive and intriguing to me is the fact that in single A this year, he is mashing right-handed pitching. Now, I will say this. He has way more at-bats against right-handed pitching than he does against left-handed pitching this season, but 9 out of his 10 home runs are against righties. 24 of his 31 RBIs are against righties. He's done an unbelievable job of hitting same-side pitching, where he's hitting .316 against right-handed pitching this year and has an OPS of .950 against right-handed pitching. He is a guy that I think is going to become the productivity namesake of the Phillies minor league system. He's going to get national recognition soon, if he hasn't already. So right now, according to Major League Baseball, like MLB.com, he is not one of the top 100 prospects in baseball just yet. I would be stunned if he's not a top 100 prospect by the latest next offseason, talking about like heading into the 2026 season. But I wouldn't be shocked if he's a top 100 prospect when they re-rank them at the middle portion of the year. I think he's that good and he's ascending that fast. Guys like Keith Law not only have him in a top 100, he already has him in a top 50. Keith Law has him ranked 40th in his prospect pool. He's currently the 7th ranked prospect by ESPN's Kylie McDaniel, which is 6 spots higher where MLB has him on the Phillies prospect list at 13. He's not going to stay at 13 much longer. And it's not just because of his productivity. I think it does play in part because Mick Abel and Seth Johnson, who now are on the Major League roster, as they mature out of the prospect rankings, he'll move up just naturally by those two guys being on Major League rosters. But Aaron Escobar has been unbelievable this season in single A. Like, if you have Twitter, I would say head on over to Twitter and just Google or just search Aaron Escobar and be wowed by the amount of times that the ball explodes off of his bat. He's not a huge guy. I think he's 5'10", maybe in the 200-ish range. I'll find that exact number for you now as I try to do this live. He's actually only 5'10", 180. So he's not like a huge dude, but the pop is starting to get there as he gets, a little bit older and matures as a player a little bit. As I said, he's gone from he hit 7 home runs in his first 290 to almost 300 at bats as a minor league player. In his first 182 at bats this year, he has 10. The extra base hits are there. The pop is there. The slug is off the charts. Again, 50 points higher than it was last year. And in 2023, it's up 230 points. I mean, the way that this guy has emerged as one of the Phillies' top prospects over the last year and a half has been awesome. And yes, thank you, Ray. His name is pronounced Aaron, but it is spelled Aroon. So it looks like it would be Arun, but it is pronounced Aaron. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he is the cousin of Ronald Acuna Jr. and Luis Angel Acuna. That family just continues to produce like legit major league type players. It's actually unbelievable. But that is our Ace Hardware temperature check segment of the day. Head on over to acehardwarehomeservices.com to get all of your needs taken care of, whether you're thinking about a leaky pipe or your AC or your cooling. If you want to get your heating in check before the winter months, I know we got the summer to still deal with. Head on over to Ace Hardware, homeservices.com to schedule an in-home estimate quickly. But that is our Ace Hardware temperature check. Who's heating up? Phillies prospect Aaron Escobar. All right, we'll pause one more time here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. Got a lot of fun to get into in the last 15 minutes or so of the show before we get out of here and we turn things over to the PHLY Eagles podcast that is going to come on at 2 o'clock. But one more time, let's pause for just a second. We'll tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. All right, Golden Nugget Jeweler, because it's the place where Philly gets engaged. You've known that for a while, but for the past 30 years, they have operated out of the very same location in the heart of Philadelphia. And customers from around the tri-state area and even Baltimore and New York City have come to Golden Nugget Jeweler to find the perfect engagement ring or wedding band because their staff is highly trained and they're dedicated to providing you an incredible, unique, personalized, one-of-one shopping experience. They offer a vast selection of engagement rings and wedding bands, but they also give you high-end watches, fashion jewelry, and sparkling diamond necklaces, bracelets, earrings, and so much more. So no matter what you're in the market for, whether you are thinking about popping the question to your special someone, or if you're thinking about Father's Day is rolling right around the corner, if you want to buy a nice watch or something along those lines for the father in your life, whether it's your dad, your spouse, whether it's an important person who happens to be a dad, your brother or your brother-in-law, whatever the case may be, they have incredible options, not just for that big moment in your life that's asking a special someone to marry you, but also for everyday moments, also for everyday holidays and things like that. So head on over to goldennuggetjewelry.com because it's the place where Philly gets engaged. You deserve an expert and the best price. You can learn more, again, at goldennuggetjewelry.com. They're also found right on the corner of Chestnut and 8th in downtown Philly. All right, one more read, and then we'll have some fun here. Let's tell you about Monarch Money. Speaking about saving money, I've told you this before. My wife and I just opened up a couple of accounts to save some money for my son's future because life sucks. And when I say that, I mean it's because it's expensive. It is a difficult task to navigate financially throughout your life. But whatever moment of life that you're in, thinking about saving for college, retirement plan, home plan, if you're thinking about, do I have enough money saved away for a rainy day? You never know. Maybe the car breaks down. Maybe you need to fix your AC. Maybe you need a new roof. Whatever the case may be, saving money becomes a really difficult task for people. Not only because it's a difficult thing to do, but because life comes at you fast. And that's where Monarch Money comes into play. They are going to operate as your personal CFO. You're going to have all of your accounts, your credit cards, your investments all in one spot. You're going to know exactly where your money stands without any of the hassle. So you can track your spending, your savings, your investments effortlessly, and you can focus on what matters most, bringing your biggest life goal a reality. It's the financial tool that people love, and it's why it was named the Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025 and is the top recommended personal finance app by users and experts with over 30,000 five-star reviews. So get control of your overall finance with Monarch Money. Use the code PHLY at monarchmoney.com to save 50% on your first year. Once again, the code PHLY at monarchmoney.com gets you half off of your first year. Yeah, sorry, K-Red. Yes, life does tend to evaporate your money very quickly. Just to take not to dive too deep into like personal finances, but so here at PHLY, we get paid bi-monthly. And the money comes in, and then rent takes it right out. And then student loans takes it right out. And listen, I'm not the only one who goes through this. We all are going through life at our own pace. And I'm not trying to this is not a woe is me testimonial. This is just it's the difficulties of life. So if you're looking for somewhere to track all of those finances in the right way, Monarch Money is the place to go. All right, we have a lot to get to in the final 10 minutes of today's show. The first thing that I wanted to talk about, this was a tweet from Ben Verlander, brother of Justin Verlander. He's a media member, if you will. You may know Ben Verlander. I hope you know Justin Verlander. You may know Ben Verlander from being perhaps the biggest Shohei Ohtani fan on the planet. That guy tweets about Shohei Ohtani like he's his brother and not Justin Verlander. But I will say this. This is a great tweet from Ben Verlander, and I retweeted it from the PHLY account yesterday and said, things that you love to see. MLB viewership is on the rise big time, Verlander says. This year versus last year, Fox viewership up 10%, ESPN viewership up 22%, TBS viewership up 16%, MLB Network up 13%, MLB TV up 27%. And the reason that I left out that last part, the one underneath TBS for last, is because I think this is the most important number. And if you are over the age of 35, I do not mean to discredit you. This is not meant to say you're not valuable in this data collection. None of that is the case. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. But Ben says that viewership on that single platform from the viewer, the demographic of 18 to 34 is up 69%. That to me is maybe the most important number of all of these numbers, because forever and probably fair, baseball has been viewed as the leisure sport. Baseball has been viewed as the old America's pastime, right? It was always baseball's America's pastime. But I think somewhere along the line, there was a generational flip away from baseball and towards the NFL, towards the NBA, and for good reason. Not because I think baseball is a lesser sport. You know, I live and breathe this sport. And I'm part of that 18 to 34 demographic. I'm towards the older end at 31, almost 32 now, but I am still part of that demographic. And I am probably in the minority of a fan base that says, I love this game more than any other game. It's been ingrained in my brain from a young age. My father's a diehard baseball fan. His father was a diehard baseball fan. So it means something in our family. But I do think there was a flip at some point to the NBA and to the NFL for that 18 to 34 age range. And I think there's a couple of reasons behind that. I think first and foremost, it's social media, and it was baseball's inability for a really long time to connect to that audience specifically. If you were to say, what is the best sport in terms of audience engagement on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube Shorts, if I were to ask you what you think the best sport is, off the top of your head, what answer would you give me? Because I would tell you it's the NBA. The NBA has conquered social media. Maybe the pendulum has swung too far the other way, where it's a lot of hot takes and things like that. But I think the NBA has conquered social media and has done the best job of it. The NFL is king, and it's an entity in and of itself. It does not need social media, but it uses it as a launching point to do these types of conversations. Major League Baseball sucked at social media for a really long time. Could not get out of its own way for a really long time. I think they're doing better at it as of late. And I think they're doing a better job with, connecting to a younger audience because of it. I think that with baseball, you have the opportunity to pinpoint stars. And baseball did not do a good job of it for my youth. All right, let me rephrase that. From after my youth. So when I think about my youth, it was Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire. It was the steroid era, home run hitters, big pop. And then the next generation, maybe not the next generation, but flowed right into Albert Pujols, Alex Rodriguez, David Ortiz. There was marketability behind baseball. And then in the 2010s, for whatever reason, baseball didn't do a very good job of it. There were still players that were marketable. Mike Trout was the best player in the world for almost a decade. Now, I think him being injured towards the latter portion of that hurt that. But there have been superstar type pitchers that have pitched in the last decade. Clayton Kershaw, surefire Hall of Famer, an MVP and a Cy Young winner multiple times over. Justin Verlander, same attributes. Maybe one of my favorite pitchers that I've ever watched, Max Scherzer, same attributes. There were guys that could be marketable. Baseball just didn't do a very good job of it. And then I think the other thing now is, or let me finish that thought really quickly. The what they've done now, and maybe you get a little bit tired of seeing the same guys, but who are their marketable stars? Shohei Ohtani, from both a skill set perspective and an international perspective, it's Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge. They're the two big ones. We're looking at two generational type hitters, one of which had this like monumental burst onto the scene 4 or 5 years ago and has not relinquished it in Aaron Judge. The other one has the biggest international marketability across the world probably since Ichiro. And I don't want to pinpoint it just to Japanese players, but I do think that those two guys, both having illustrious careers in Japan and then coming over and just sliding in effortlessly to being major leaguers, where Shohei's now a 3-time MVP. Ichiro won the MVP and the Rookie of the Year his first season. Ichiro's a Hall of Famer. Shohei Ohtani's going to be a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. Those two guys have had the biggest international limelight, and they've lived up to it and maybe surpassed it when it comes to Shohei Ohtani. I mean, this is a two-way player who has last year won an MVP without throwing a pitch. It's a guy who throws 95, 96 effortlessly, has some wipeout breaking ball, and then is going to take you deep for 450 the next night. It's like, I mean, like the Major League Baseball has finally gotten to a point where they've done a better job of marketing their stars. And the two guys that headline that conversation are Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge. And as they should be. They should be talked about every single night. And I know day in and day out baseball fans probably get tired of hearing Ohtani and Judge, Judge and Ohtani. What about this team? What about my team? How come you're not covering the Cubs? They're playing great ball. How come you're not covering the Padres? They're playing great ball. But in terms of marketability, Major League Baseball is doing what it's supposed to do and marketing its stars for the first time ever. And then I think the next, well, not ever, but for the first time in a long time, I should say. And then I think the next thing that has brought fans back in is the pace of play. You know me. I've said for years, I hate it when they brought in the DH to the National League. It's made the Phillies better, so they've benefited from it, and I think it's made baseball better. I didn't think it would because it would take out the managerial conversation of things, but it's made baseball better because nobody wants to sit up there and watch pitchers bunt, like sack bunt, or hit 112. I get that. The majority of fans don't want that. So when they brought the DH in, it's made the product better. As much as I hate to admit it, bringing in the pitch clock made the product better. It's shortened games. It's made games more palatable. Fans don't want to sit for 3.5 hours on a Tuesday night and get done at 10:30 and then have to get up for work at 5:30. Fans will do it, though, if the game ends at 9:45. They'll do it if the game ends at 9:15. Especially with the 6:45 home game start time. Everything that they've done to shorten the game actually has worked. I was adamantly against all of these things. I knew I was, paddling upstream without a paddle, basically. I was trying to swim upstream and was getting nowhere. I knew it was a losing battle. But for me, this was something that took away from the mystique, the chess-like atmosphere of baseball. And everything they've done has worked. And it's made the casual fan want to watch the game more than it did 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And then K-Red brings up the last part. And I think it's going to happen eventually. I think eventually a challenge system is going to get put into play. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But I do want to say to everybody here on the PHLY Phillies podcast, if you're watching on our streaming platforms, if you're here on Roku or Samsung or one of our other fast channels that we call them, our streaming platform, thank you so much for hanging out with us. If you wouldn't mind, head on over to allphly.com to watch the rest of the show because it is officially time for overtime. All right, let's head on into the final overtime period of the show. And then again, as K-Red brings up, and I'll post that. Don't worry about it, Andrew. I got that one. I know you're doing a million things. Thank you. The challenge system is probably the next thing to come because something that bothers me and you and most Major League Baseball fans is the subjectivity of umpires' calls, especially umpires' calls behind the plate. I have been a big proponent for a really long time of I would prefer consistency over anything. And what I mean by that is if you have a strike zone. Now, there is a fundamental strike zone in Major League Baseball that probably should just get universally called. If we're being honest with ourselves, should probably just get universally called. But understanding that that's not going to happen with humans behind the plate who are fallible and who are trying to make pitch calls on 98 and 99 and pitches with wipeout movement. I get it. It's a hard job to do. There are times where I don't feel I feel terrible for major league umpires, especially home plate umpires. But where I lose that soft spot for them is when they start making the strike zone whatever they want it to be. Well, it's my strike zone. It's a strike today. I don't buy that anymore. That's something that is reserved for Little League. Like we've all been in a Little League game where it's a walk fest, right? It's literally Rick Vaughn, ball 4, ball 8, ball 12, and Vaughn's walk the bases loaded. Nobody wants to see that. Like I right now, my sister is in Little League softball, and their umpires have been very clear about how they're going to call the strike zone. Fair strike zone to begin the game. If the pitchers aren't throwing strikes, it's going to get expanded. It may go, a ball out and a ball up, or you know what I mean? Whatever the decision gets made. That's Little League. I mean, we're talking about 8, 9, and 10-year-olds playing Little League sports. This is Major League Baseball and professional baseball. At some point, we're not doing this is my strike zone thing because I'm tired of the Angel Hernandez and the Joe West and the Laz Diaz umpires. That's the other problem is how many good umpires can you name? I'll wait. Other than Pat Hoberg, who got caught gambling, who was one of the best until he got caught gambling, how many good umpires can you name? How many bad umpires can you name? A lot more, I guarantee it. So that's my problem with the strike zone is it can't be fluid. It can't be what you want it to be. It has to be something that is at least concrete and knowing game in and game out. So when the challenge system eventually does come into play, and I would say it's probably going to take effect in the 2020. When's the collective bargaining agreement up? I think it's after next season. I've said for a while, I think we're going to get a strike for 2027. So whether it's at the beginning of whenever 2027 starts or 2028, I think that's when we'll get it. I don't think we get it next season. And I am pretty darn convinced. I have no authority on this whatsoever. I have no inside sources. This is just my thought process on things. I'm pretty convinced there's going to be a strike at some point in 2027. I don't know if it impacts the season or not, or if it's an off-season strike, but I do think it happens. I think that's what post whenever they figure out the next collective bargaining agreement, that's when I think you'll get the challenge system. All right. One final thing before we get out of here. I apologize, Andrew. We went long as always. One final thing before we get out of here. 15 years ago on Monday, and I'm sorry we didn't talk about it on Monday. It just slipped my mind. 15 years ago on Monday, maybe the worst call in the history, speaking of umpires, maybe the worst call in the history of umpiring took place. And that is when Jason Donald was ruled safe for the final, as the final out of Armando Galarraga's perfect game. And that's the unfortunate thing about that I was talking about, that old school feel for baseball. That's the unfortunate thing for today's game. If that happened today, the Tigers would have just challenged. It would have gotten overturned. And while it would have been a kind of weird end to a game, kind of an anticlimactic end to the game, it would have been a perfect game. Because Jason Donald wasn't close to being safe. He was out by a good step and a half. It was not close at all. And I know Jim Joyce, he and Galarraga, talked and made up, and Jim Joyce was, cried on the field. And I feel bad for the guy, right? I think he got a lot of unwarranted hate for the call that he made. Listen, it was an unfortunate. If that call gets made in the third inning, nobody's talking about this. I just feel really bad. It's a perfect game. We all acknowledge it as a perfect game. It's just a perfect storm, if you will, of not having the challenge system at the time. But 15 years ago today, maybe the worst call in the history of baseball. Just so bad. So I had to talk about that for just a second. All right, big thanks to everybody in the chat today. Let's do a little bit of like the Sixers like to do roll call. I'm not going to take that from them, but I'm going to say hello to everybody in the chat one more time. Ray Schumacher, Frank Barber, K-Red. Wow, you guys were active today. Thank you. Magic, AC Philla. Who else we got here? James Alexander. All of you. Elephant in the room. Thank you so much. I'm really scrolling. You guys were active today. Thank you so much for being a part of today's show. Really appreciate it. Blanche Devereaux was in the chat. Peeling Onions was here, I think, earlier. So thank you to everybody for being here in the chat today. And a big thank you to Andrew Frazier for producing today's show. Head on over to the PHLY Eagles podcast, which is now live. You can check them out from 2 to 3. Then you can check out the PHLY Sixers podcast from 3 to 4. We'll be back on Friday. We're going to talk to Jake Starr, who is the play-by-play voice of the Reading Fightin' Phils. So we'll do a little bit more of a deeper dive minor league report. So we're going to check in with him at 1:15 next Friday. We'll wrap up this series against the Blue Jays. We'll take a look at ahead to this weekend series as well. And we will do that all from 1 to 2 on Friday. So we'll be back with you on Friday afternoon. Until that time, enjoy the game tonight. Mick Abel takes the ball for the second time in his Major League career. And then the Phillies will try to go for the series win tonight as well. So we'll see you on Friday at 1 o'clock right here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.